Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 1 of the anime series, Onihei, which was a series that actually stuck out to me in looking at the winter 2016-2017 upcoming releases for its being a historical anime, a period piece, which it definitely turns out to be. And I was just wholly captivated by that period setting, Tenmei era Japan, 1783. It kind of reminded me with its stylized jazzy OP and music strewn all throughout the episode of kind of a hybridization of certain anime series I love, such as Samurai Champloo meets Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, for example. In the plotting, the pacing, the character designs, very samurai-esque and all that kind of stuff. Just all these things that I really love and enjoy about anime series like this, historicals and such like that. No supernatural, no school sort of slice of life stuff. I mean, it looks like an action adventure piece to a point, but it also is going to have these sort of criminal investigative aspects as well. And there's going to be some character drama as we see with this first episode. What was largely intriguing to me about that, though, and what kind of prompted me to come on and do a video about it, because I did thoroughly enjoy the episode, I wasn't necessarily immediately prompted to come on and do a review, was that I ended up looking at my anime list and the forum posts that were coming in just moments after the episode had aired and people were finishing up with it, much as I had myself. And I was already seeing complaints about the animation being choppy, the CG in certain crowded thoroughfare segments in the episode. And there were only two moments that I spotted in the episode that stood out to me as like almost taking me out of it. That was the CG crowded areas, in the streets of this area. But also, there was one moment where the lip sync was a little off with the Japanese voice actor. And these are two complaints subsequently that I also did see listed in one person's post, so I can kind of see where people are coming from. But I'm the type of person, if you haven't gained that awareness already, who largely spends the majority of my time coming on doing videos talking about things I loved. There have been times in the past where I have dedicated whole videos and numerous videos talking about things I loathed and could not stand about a series, kind of venting my frustrations. And sometimes I am a little more critical, but for the most part, I wax fanboy about whatever the given topic is, whatever it is that I like about an anime episode or this, that, or the other thing. Even if I may not end up covering it episodically or whatever like that, if I enjoyed it, I want to come on and voice why I enjoyed it, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this particular series. It was also a level of mild confusion on my part because I'm largely unfamiliar with the story this is based on, Onihei Hankacho, which actually goes back to 1967. I'm sure it's based on some literary works and such like that. I'm sure there have been many iterations. I think there have been several live action, in fact, between TV series and films and such. Many actors have played the sort of main focus titular character, Heizo Hasegawa, the Onihei himself, and I was a little bit confused in watching the episode, which is why I went looking to see what people's appraisals of it were, because the focused character in this first episode is not, in fact, Heizo Hasegawa, but this, for all intents and purposes, a thief betrayed by his gang, of ruffians and thieves and such, Kumahachi, and it's through his eyes that we kind of are introduced to Heizo Hasegawa, the main character of the series, the focused character. All through the episode, from the very beginning, are we seeing, Heizo, his whole group, his conglomerate, going after and successfully capturing Kumahachi, who is on the run after having been left behind by his crew several years back. And it's interesting how when they finally capture him, they're torturing him. Everything from whipping him and then having him tied up to slamming a stake through his foot, and he's screaming and retching around and all this kind of stuff, and then pouring hot wax over the open wound in his foot. So there is a level of sadism in Heizo Hasegawa's character. But then do we see the tide kind of turn? It's months later, and, Kumahachi has been imprisoned, and he's healed a little bit over time, and he's just spent a lot of time, in a cell, when all of a sudden Heizo comes and starts talking to him, trying to learn a little more about him. And this speaks to the large sort of backdrop of what this series is supposed to be about, the focus that it's supposed to have on Heizo Hasegawa himself. He's supposed to basically be reforming criminals, trying to create a sort of spy net in this Tenmei era Japan of former criminals that he kind of rehabilitates and turns into spies, splinter cells to get inside criminal organizations, gangs, try to help, go after notable and on-the-run criminals, gangsters, and all these kinds of things. And a lot of that it really captivated me from the get-go. I can kind of see why this series has such longevity, why it's been around for as long as it has. And even with some, what you could say arguably is choppy animation segments of it that were not necessarily on par with some of the best of the day. And I think I heard somebody mentioning that this was a relatively new studio who's producing this as well, so the faults can be probably found there, chalked up to that. But for me personally, I was watching this episode, and with the exception of those 2 points, the lip sync being slightly off in one scene for just a matter of seconds, to the CG thoroughfare, crowded areas, which again only lasted for a few seconds. Most of this episode, the plotting of it really captivated me. In Heizo's trying to reach out to Kumahachi, it turns out to coincide with his former organization, the one that left him behind, Tenbei Chigashira, and I'm not even sure if that's the name of the gang or the name of the leader, or which of those 2 names is, such like that. And basically there have been these criminal acts, where they've been going in and attacking entire, buildings of people, murdering them all, and leaving behind these little wood carvings with that name, Tenbei Chigashira, on it. And this, basically is representative of either the gang itself or the leader of the gang, which was, as soon as Kumahachi hears about this, he pricks up his ears and he's listening intently. And he pleads with Heizo and his, compatriots in this effort to stop these criminals, to hear him out. That this is not the actions that this gang would take, because it's sort of an honor among thieves thing where they had these 3 rules. They wouldn't kill anyone, they wouldn't steal from the poor, and they wouldn't rape women. And there was a point where Kumahachi just gives in to temptation one time and he tries to accost a woman. He is stopped by the leader of this group, whether that is Tenbei Chigashira as, the leader's name or what have you. He is, stopped just in time and then cast out of this organization. So he's been largely on his own for many years, and he has kind of taken to heart that noble, aspect of thievery, if you will, that honor among thieves, 3 rules, and he's been living the rest of his life like that up until this point, up until getting caught. And what is intriguing is he has earned the confidence in the conversation. We don't get a lot of it between he and Heizo. He earns Heizo's confidence enough to send him out as a representative to the cause to find this organization and find its leader, whom Kumahachi believes must be an imposter, must be a fake, because they would never hurt people. They would never rape women and all these things. And it seems like that has been completely eschewed, thrown out the window by the current activities, if this is, and whether it is or not, the legit organization he once knew. And so he is led to this area, sort of, I don't know if it's just a hotel, a hostel, a brothel. And I guess because, Kumahachi kind of makes a pretty big, standout entrance to this segment of Japan that, this syndicate is supposed to be moving on to next. Information, by the way, they've actually gathered, Heizo has gotten from a survivor of one of their attacks, this young woman who pretended to be dead and was missed by the gang. She had overheard them saying where they were heading to. So Kumahachi effectively, he enters this part of town and he takes out this guy who is at least 3 times his size, who bumps into him, or he purposely bumps into, basically to get the word back to this, gang syndicate that he is in town. Somebody's likely to recognize him, and it surefire works where the leader of this group, whether it actually was the leader he knows from memory or not, because it's been, 15 some odd years since he'd seen the group, there is this fat, grotesque looking guy as compared to the guy from his memory this sort of muscular, young-looking man, pipe smoking, looks almost a little bit like Heizo Hasegawa himself, the titular hero, if you will. But for all intents and purposes, he's talking to this guy. This guy seems to remember him. And he ends up sort of roundabout asking you, what about the 3 rules we once had, where we wouldn't kill, we wouldn't steal from the poor, we wouldn't rape women? And this guy is just laughing in his face, completely ruining any, sort of image he once had of that, honor among thieves element to this former group that he was once a part of. This guy's like, nah, that's something that was an ideal that I once, touted just to impress people, and we're not really beholden to that anymore. We're going to, give and take and do whatever we want, manhandle criminals, manhandle women, steal from anyone we feel like stealing from, and we'll slaughter anyone who gets in our way, is the new motif, the latent motif of this criminal syndicate. And Kumahachi becomes a sort of integral part of, Heizo's whole outlook of tracking down this organization. There's a point where he set up a meeting to come to later, where this, we don't know if he's an imposter leader of this organization or not, but for all intents and purposes, he believes in Kumahachi's wanting to get back involved. He's opened the door for that, and when they literally open the door, the knock comes, and the leader of this organization has he's surrounded by his people. Here comes in Heizo's whole organization of law enforcement people, and if you resist, you die, is basically their whole, credo in this effect. And so, it was just really intriguing to me in following the path of Kumahachi. He was trying to make up for this, spoiling of his past, and even though he was trying to be an honorable thief, that kind of thing, for all intents and purposes for a very long time, ever since being cast out of this organization, come to find the organization itself has bottomed itself out, and he cannot face whether or not this is actually the man he once knew, the leader of it, and ends up aligning his talents to Heizo's cause. And again, that is very much touching upon what the through-line theme of this whole story is meant to be, going back to its beginnings in 1967. And, again, sort of samurai era, Tenmei era, and dealing with a law enforcement person who is so, I guess you could say, convincing. He's gained this name as being like a devil of a sort, because he's willing to go to extreme ends, as we see, and brutal torture-wise and such, to convince criminals to let go of whatever honor they think they have with their criminal syndicates and organizations. But eventually he takes a different kind of tack and tries to get to know them and turn them around to his side and employ them for the use of seeking criminals out. And all of it, really did captivate me, and I enjoyed watching it for the most part. I can only hope that the series continues to stay on par with this level of deep and engaging a story and characterization, whether the focus is on Heizo, which I kind of hope. I hope we get to know him more, rather than really focusing on criminals and everything like that. It would be cool to kind of see in the vein of Ghost in the Shell, where he would be Chief Aramaki in that sort of position, gathering a sort of special group of former criminals to become, his enforcement crew and things like that. That could kind of be cool, but I don't know if that's the direction it's going to be going in or not. And frankly, I cannot promise any sort of episodic review coverage of the series. I mainly think I just want to watch this one as it debuts every week for myself. Maybe I will be, given the compulsion to come on and talk about it episode after episode, but it's one of those things where I won't know until I'm in the moment. And again, I'm leaning right now to say, while I did very much enjoy it, I really just kind of wanted to point it out that it is something you can enjoy if you don't have to be overly critical about the animation and all that kind of stuff. Focus on the story and the characters, and it'll pull you in. At least that's how it was for me. It was highly enjoyable, and I wanted to put out a more positive outlook on it, where I'm already seeing negative, appraisals of it. So while I may not be covering it episodically, will remain to be seen whether or not that happens. It is definitely one I'm going to be watching, because I found it intriguing as first episodes go, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you're familiar with the story, the history of it, if you've ever seen any of the live action interpretations of it, or iterations, incarnations, what you thought of those, what you thought of this adaptation from what it is, the idea, somewhat controversial, I would think, focusing on the criminal first in the first episode rather than the sort of titular hero, arguable hero, and protagonist in any case. It just kind of seemed odd to me. And again, it kind of mixed me up a little bit as to who the focus was meant to be on. But otherwise, I dug it. And when I figured that all out, I was like, okay, awesome, I'm on board for this. And so yeah, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. Otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.